Like if you feel like there's something that you want to improve on, then that's when you go see your doctor. But there's no right or wrong answer, right? This is very subjective. And a lot of times we'll see couples who have mismatched libidos. Now, does that mean one person's right and one person is wrong? No, it's just a matter of like, well, how do you, if you want to come to a point where you agree, how do we get there? And what is your end goal?
Yeah, later we'll talk a little bit more about chemistry, which I find infinitely fascinating because in my life experience, I've just been struck by the fact that occasionally you have a physical interaction with someone, or sometimes it's not even physical interaction, and they are just so unbelievably arousing to you, or somewhere in between, or sometimes it just sort of ain't there, or it's just not there that much, or nobody likes to talk about this, or it's there until you sleep together and then it's not there. And this is not just put on males, this is put on females. I hope she doesn't kill me for saying this. I know somebody who is a family member who once said, sometimes you have to realize you never want to sleep with somebody again by sleeping with them. And here we're not talking about traumatic experience, right?
Right.
So, again, the discussion around libido, as you so aptly pointed out, engaging what is healthy levels of libido has a lot to do with what oneself desires as well as the hopes and expectations of the people that we are sexually involved with. So we'll get back to that a little bit later in the context of chemistry, because I find it so fascinating and it's something that isn't talked about enough. But thank you for that. Let's get back to female sexual arousal response and orgasm.
So physiologically, what happens to the body is it prepares for penetration. Now that could be a penis, that could be a sex toy, that could be a digit, finger, to be more specific. So what it does is the cervix moves up and out of the way. The inner 1/3, 2/3 of the vagina lengthens and elongates to allow for penetration. And it can actually nearly double in size of the baseline vaginal length. And so it is preparing for that. So so that's part of it. In some people who have painful intercourse, it's because they haven't had adequate time for arousal. And so the penis is penetrating before they've had those adaptations to occur. And also the labia open up to allow for that penetration. So these things actually happen physiologically to allow for preparation. So while some people may be aroused and get to that point quicker, some people do need a longer period of time of what, as you described, foreplay. And not everyone is the same, but I think it's important to have that discussion with your partner. And, lubrication is one of the ways that people assess arousal, but that's not the be-all, end-all. Some people just make a lot of lubrication and some people don't. And certainly that changes with age and hormones. So certainly we know that after menopause, with a drop in estrogen and testosterone, you will see a decrease in lubrication. And sometimes if people are on medications that can alter their hormonal axis, they may also see changes in lubrication. During breastfeeding, you can see changes in lubrication. And again, this is they're not aroused necessarily. This is like a physiologic problem that they're having.
Can we distinguish between arousal-based lubrication, let's say sexual arousal-based lubrication? And again, folks, forgive me for being so hyper-specific in language, but there are other forms of arousal besides sexual arousal that we know from, it's not a pleasant topic, from reports following sexual assault that, oftentimes the victim is demonized for having been lubricated. And they will say, well, then people will presume that somehow they wanted that interaction, and that's not true. Yeah. In those cases, it's clear that the lubrication occurred independent of libido type arousal.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So let's set that aside. Again, unpleasant topic, but one that's important to flag. Are there forms of non-libido type arousal lubrication that allow for non-painful or even pleasureful penetration that are important to distinguish from the arousal-based lubrication? In other words, I have to imagine that women will have sex and it can be pleasureful or at least not painful, and that might relate in some way to baseline levels of lubrication.